play the games, get involved with various companies, and that's part of your network. And then they go, oh, you do art. Well, what kind of stuff do you do? Or, oh, you do design. What kind of things do you do? What ideas do you have? Again, it's all about putting yourself out there. What were your experiences working for the first time with someone directing your art? Because that is your first tripping stone, I think.
Yeah, the first time. I was still kind of developing a direction. You know, I was still trying to find my style, and I think a lot of you are in that same boat. Is you're trying to find a style, and this is where you can kind of, you know, you can create a style, because they'll see a certain way, and then you're just like, oh, I like that, and this is you shooting off different ideas. You know, this is you over exaggerating a piece, and that style might become, you know, your main style for a while. I know a lot of you struggle with finding that. I don't even know if I have a true style. People say I do. A lot of my other friends, artist friends, they're just like, you just have a unique style. And I'm just like, well, I just, you know, like we all do. We all pick and take, you know, from everybody else. But during this, with the over-exaggeration, with the different variations, it helped me create something that I can always go back to. And that streamlined it. That made it faster. I could pump out these pieces of work faster because I established some framework. And that's everything for this kind of work is your time. How fast can you get this stuff out? You know, and so I think that was one of the biggest hurdles, was to establish that framework and to get that factory rolling. Yeah.
And one of the things I'll go back into is art standards is what's more important, how gorgeous and beautiful the piece of art is when you've got it on your computer screen, or what does it look like in print? And obviously print's going to be what's going to win, because you may have a beautiful piece of art, but it's got to be legible when it's this big on a card or in a token or in a rule book illustration. The most important thing that you guys can do as artists is work on the silhouette of your objects or on your characters. They have to read, and I know a lot of artists who will zoom out and they'll take their art and they'll zoom it out until it's yay big, about production size. Or if people who are working in paintings or who are working in sketches, they're going to set them down, they'll walk back about 4 or 5 feet. If it reads cleanly, and that's the key word, it has to read cleanly. From that distance or that small, you're on the right track. It is too easy to put in way too much detail. Would you like to tell that story?
My gosh. Okay, so one of our cards for Battle Gnomes is soda can armor. So I know what you're thinking. You're just going to have a bunch of soda cans placed together. This is part of the, the design process. I went into it, and this is exactly the experience that I wanted to share. Is I went a little bit too much on this piece. The soda cans were, I was drawing 100 soda cans. You know, I was drawing enough. I was creating this whole armor piece out of soda cans, because I was just like she said, soda can armor. And then what I told you guys before was the first idea that came to my head. So I'm designing this armor piece and just all these little soda cans, and I'm just like, this is more my style. This is what I was thinking. She looked at it and she said, a little bit more simple than that. So I had to simplify, and I said, well, what can I do with this piece then? So I ended up making it one soda can into the armor. So that's how you have to think. You have to be able to think on your feet, think creatively, and just be able to adapt to any situation like that. Like, I went in, I just overkill. It was overkill, and I had to take a step back and say, well, how can I do this this is going to take a long time, and how can I do this a faster way? And then the piece of art that I ended up making was more unique than just the first idea. The first idea was what maybe a lot of you thought was soda can armor. Just grab a bunch of them, but we're also talking about gnomes. So we had to, factor in the size of gnomes.
Going back to the storytelling.
Exactly. You have to factor in all that stuff. So we were just like, can we just do one can? How do I do the one can? And then it went from there. It was much easier, by the way. That piece got done much faster. Yeah. But I had to put all this work into it, and then that piece was scrapped.
So the key is to keep your work really clean, keep it really simple. I had somebody ask me the question is, so, well, what about that beautiful art like in Magic the Gathering? If you actually see the original pieces at full size, you'll see that they're really simple strokes. They're very simple colors. When they're smaller, you get the pointillism effect, and they come together and they look so much more detailed than what's really there. As an artist, sometimes it's what you don't see that's important, and not putting in details, the eye will put them in there for you. And it's kind of an interesting effect. So when it comes to keeping things clean and keeping the silhouettes clean, those are a couple of examples that I can come up with. A lot of the stuff that we were going to go into, we're going to talk about prototyping and regulations in manufacturing, but the other person on our panel who's the expert in that is not present. But I can speak of printers. Here's my best advice to all of you. Designers, producers, artists, everybody. Find out who is going to be doing your printing and work towards their standards. We had a situation where I made poker-sized cards for one printer, and then I came to do work for Tiffany to do poker-sized cards for another printer. Well, those sizes, though only minorly different, were different. And it caused me to go back through and rework my work. And when you have to retouch your work, even if it's just to resize it, you can make mistakes. You can forget to unhide a layer. You can forget to do something. And so there's more chances to introduce human errors. The other thing is that our particular printer was really, really obsessive with absolute black. Absolute black. And nothing we could do seemed to satisfy them. We did eventually get it to the point where they were able to print it. But what I would do is find out what kind of game you're going to work on. Decide what kind of game you're going to work on. Find a printer that you like, download their templates, and build your prototypes and all your base art around those templates. It's going to save you a lot of headaches down the road. Even if you switch printers and they have a slightly different template, at least the adjustments are fairly nominal. And that would be something else that I would suggest. Did you run into any of that?
Oh, dealing with dimensions on my card pieces.
Yeah.
We kind of established that beforehand, and I kind of worked in. And as Jeff also works in, I work in Adobe Flash too, so I'm a vector artist. And it's pretty easy to scale down your images.
Yeah.
You know, you're working with these with vector art. So we did kind of stumble a little bit, but it was established, and it really didn't take us off our
For those
path.
of you who are maybe Photoshop people, I work in vectors, he works in vectors, and the main reasons that I chose this was because I can take one of my images and turn it into a postage stamp, and it'll read well. I don't have to worry about pixelization. Mm-hmm. I can also take that exact same image and turn it into a billboard. And again, I will not have any pixelization. So there are some huge advantages. Now, when you're dealing with a rasterized type program like Photoshop, it has a lot of tools that I wish I had. So you're going to have to strike a balance at some point, which also brings me to the point of resolutions. The absolute minimum, personally, I think that any artist should work at is 300 dpi for print. A lot of us are used to doing work for the web, which is 72 dpi. This will not cut it when you go to print. It will look like blocky, it will be blurry, it doesn't matter how well Photoshop can adjust images, it will look like garbage when it's printed on a card or on a tabletop board piece or something like that. I urge you to work as high a res as your computers will allow you. I know artists who work at 6,000 dpi. But they're insane. They're also doing stuff for print for magazines and whatnot. So that's one of the reasons they do that. Did you have any issues whatsoever with you scanning art in and then working? Because I know you work vector, so you probably didn't. But did you have any issues?
No, I didn't.
I didn't think you would. Which also brings us a little bit to prototyping, because I talked about finding templates, downloading templates. When you're starting off, the art doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be functional. And I'm going to go into my video game hat here a little bit, and I used to teach students how to develop games, and I tell people, If your game is fun and it's just a bunch of gray boxes, it's going to be fun when it's beautiful. It has to be fun. And as an artist, our art has to support gameplay first. Everything we do has to either communicate story, immerse the player into the world, or more importantly, be a mechanic for gameplay. One of the things I was saying we're going to talk a little bit about is design. Having information that is clear and easy and quickly recognizable and understandable is going to be extremely important, especially those of you who want to do layout as opposed to being artistes. Production and layout is incredibly important. And I know Tiffany does a lot of that herself and has had to go through that process, but I've also had to do it too. Did you get to do any of the design layouts?
I worked on the background.
Oh, we'll talk about that a little bit and how that had to factor into the gameplay.
The background was kind of like the final piece for the actual the casing of the box. And like I said, that's where it all takes place. That's kind of the setting, you know, for this particular game, was that little backyard, and you know that's what actually caught me onto the project in the first place. Was I like to draw, you know, flora, like plant life and everything too. So that was the last piece of the puzzle.
That was the last piece for them,
yeah.
and it had to support the characters and the
right.
objects
That's where
and
they
stuff.
lived. Yeah, that's where they lived. That's where they fought. That's where all the bloodshed happened. So.
Well, we're getting in here, and we're almost ready to open up to your questions, which is going to be the best part to me. But before we do that, if you had to offer a single piece of advice, what would it be?
I would just say never get discouraged. I know a lot of you are out there, and you know, you just keep on looking up to the next person. But you really need to make time to look back on your stuff. Like, really make that attempt to look back on it. Personally, I just wanted to do the next best thing, and I started to tuck away my artwork, you know, and I was just like, what's the next step? What's the next step? And then I started to get into this imposter syndrome, where I kept on looking for the next best thing, and people were saying, your art's pretty nice, you know, and they were like, I could never do something like that. I just told them, I said, I'm just making lines. I was just happy with my line work. If you can be happy with that, I think that'll be very strong in anything. You can look at any artist, you know, from past times, just good line work. So just be happy with that, and don't fall into, you know, don't be so hard on yourself. And just try to, with any new project, like this project that I took on, I learned so much. Even if you take on projects that you don't necessarily like, always be learning something in those projects. Even if you're just saying, hey, this is just for, you know, a paycheck. But challenge yourself. Definitely challenge yourself and put yourself out there. Because if you can gain something from it other than just money, then you win. You know, and if you have fun with it, then you win even more. So that's what I would say is...
I'm not going to be so nice in my advice. I come from a much broader background, so I deal with artists from different areas. And I've taught for 5 years, and you always have this wonderful, eager group of people, which I love and I enjoy. And here's what I would say to you. If there is any doubt whatsoever in your life that this is what you want to do forever and ever and ever, find something else to do. And here's why. I'm going to tell you a little story. It's more video game related, but it drives the point home. I went to a conference where there was a bunch of developers, and people like yourself wanted to meet the developers and learn how to get into the industry. And there was 12 grizzled old veterans of the industry, people who I admired and loved and adored. And they said, all right, industry, people, industry. Hey, industry, tell people stories. And these guys opened up with a litany of the worst horror stories I had ever heard in my life. I, at this time, had been a veteran of about 15 years, and I'm sitting there going, I need another job. Oh, my God. But they also talked about the victories and the achievements. And then when someone came up to him and said, I loved your game, or I liked your art, or all these little things where people just talk about their experiences. How many in this room have talked with your friends about an experience with a game that you've played, like you were there, right? So what I walked away from that conference, and this is the advice I'm going to give, is being a game developer is absolutely, positively going to be the worst experience of your life, and you're going to love every second of it. All right, now is where we're going to open up the floor to you guys. We're going to get your questions. I'm giving us a little more time for those because we have such a large crowd, and I'm sure there's a lot of information that you guys were hungry for. And right up here, we've got the first one.
So how do you get from the pad to the computer?
Ah.
That's where I have trouble.
Well, I don't know if that's your work style or not. Do you want to do that one?
Oh, my medium?
No. How do you go from the sketch pad to the computer? For me, I actually scan it.
Okay.
I do sketch. In fact, my sketching has gotten horrible over the years because I go, I'll just fix this on the computer. Or I'll do a hand over here, and nose over here, and eye over here, and I'll just put it together over here. And so my sketching has suffered for it. And so I would urge you not to let that happen. But usually get a really good flatbed scanner. There's printers that have a decent, because I work fairly small, and I scan in at 150 dpi, so it's more than large enough for what the programs that I'm working with is. But just keep it simple, keep it clean, keep it sharp. Scan it in, be it Photoshop or Illustrator or Flash for me, because we're insane and we work in a very small program that no one ever deals with ever.
Right.
But that's the best way I find, is just go ahead and scan things in and then work with, you can either use it as your line weights, because a lot of people like the way their pencil sketches look, and there's great line weights in there, whereas I'm using vector lines and I have to fake it, so it's a lot more work for me. But it's just a matter of what your personal flavor is. So hopefully that answers that for you. Any other questions? Yes?
As someone who's trying to transfer from pad to tablet, what cheap or inexpensive program would you recommend to start out with?
As far as a art program, are you going to like an iPad or something like that?
More, it's a pen tablet type.
Okay. I believe Sketch is a really good program that I know is inexpensive. On the iPad, I know it's free. But I know there's look through the Adobe products in general. They do have a lot of good things. And if you guys are students, student discounts are an amazing thing. You can get like $800 programs for like almost nothing if you've got a good student discount. But as far as good, cheap sketching programs, there is Photoshop. There are some light versions of Photoshop.
I do have GIMP.
I think is GIMP
Yeah,
still
GIMP.
a thing?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who can do some amazing stuff in Paint. So, you know, it's not about the software, guys.
Right.
It's about your drive and passion. You've got to have that drive, that passion, that dedication to your craft. Some more questions? Yes?
So for artists trying to get into the industry, I know you talked about social media.
Mhm.
Networking though, do you guys have any stories, networking stories, or maybe advice for people trying to get into that sort of marketing or hiring?
Thousands of stories. Thousands. And it's usually at events like this. Put yourself out there, like I said. You put yourself out there on social media, and so that was his personal path to getting started. My personal path to getting started and all of this mess started a very, very long time ago. And again, it was about networking. I actually got started in conventions being a gopher. Literally what it means. Go for this, go for that, go for the other thing. And I then discovered there was this thing called an art show. You can make money. Cool. So I just kind of got involved with one of the local conventions, and I started doing art. And people bought it. I couldn't believe it. I did more, and they bought that too. And then you start making friends with the different artists, and you start going to different shows. And that's kind of the old way of doing it, is actually physical. But you can do a very similar thing online, where, you know, I have a DeviantArt page. A lot of people here probably have a DeviantArt page. That's a great place to get started, although No one ever looks at my page. I'm beginning to wonder about it. Facebook is another great one. Draw Crowd is another great one. I actually have an online cartoon strip, which I'm starting to meet people through that as well and to talk to different artists. Coming to the room full of artists. Hey, she would like to talk to you about getting started, guys. Everyone get together and talk. And that's literally how these things start. You are going to make some lifelong friends here. It's really great, the community that is around you in this room right now. So I would just say, put yourself out there. You don't necessarily have to get a booth in Artist Alley, although that's very useful. Sit in the halls and sketch. Go to tables and game and talk to people about the game. And, hey, how do you guys get art into this game? And they'll point you to people like Tiffany or to other designers and producers that are here. There is a wealth of talent and people here at this convention, and this is one of the best places you could have come. Sorry. As I told you guys, I can talk, so shut me up when you got something to say, please. Way back in the back.
I'm still learning too.
So now that's a perfect segue. What about from the client side? What do you expect of clients hiring or bringing on people, and what do you expect of fostering an artistic community? Something that you would like to step around for and beyond the moment.
You want the truth? Pay them. Don't say we'll work for exposure. That's a good way to get hung up by duct tape on a wall someplace. As a client looking for artists, have a clean vision of what it is you want to do. And I love the fact that you said, I want to foster this community. By all means. The big thing is paycheck. We don't work for free. We can't eat, exposure. If you want to be a part of this community as one of our clients, be a business person. Be upfront. Be very, very open about what it is you need. Be very clear about what it is that you want. And artists and designers and producers and everybody in this room, that's probably a key piece of advice, is be very clear about your expectations. Miscommunication is a bear when you're dealing with design, because sometimes you're doing it from afar. Sometimes you're dealing with people on the East Coast and you're on the West Coast kind of thing. Communication is probably the biggest tool in addition to any other skill that you have that you can learn. You need to be very, very clear about those expectations. As far as fostering the community, promote. Find an artist that you love, and that goes for everybody in this room. Find an artist, find a game, find a producer, find a designer, somebody you love, somebody whose passions match your own, and promote them. We work in a vacuum 99% of the time. It's only when we get to events like this that we actually go, oh my God, there's people in the world.
Right.
So I would say promote their work. You don't have to buy their stuff, although that's nice. Second floor elevators, not escalators. Yes, brought them games. Anyway, you had a question.
Yeah. What 3D modeling programs would you use the most that you highly recommend?
3D Studio Max. That's what I personally use. I know a lot of people work with Blender. That's a free program that you can get in and mess with. It's fairly solid. I remember back when it was Rhino Blender. It's gotten a lot better. I know a lot of 3D printing people who work with 3D printers like it because it's cheap. It does put out STL files. But personally, my bang for the buck is 3D Studio Max, and I can go on for days about why. But it is a good, solid program. That or Maya, either one. Okay? Anyone? Oh, right over here.
So as someone who's going to college soon and wants to be an artist in this industry, what classes would you recommend taking?
Oh, obviously art, but you want to talk on that?
Actually, I am self-taught. I've been, I just pick up things. I look at different artists, and I just try to mimic that. And over the years, I've gotten fairly good at it. You know what? My whole thing, and I think this gentleman right here talked about it before, is sketching to the computer. Well, I'm the opposite. I started in digital means, and I'm actually going back to traditional. So that's my biggest thing right now, is it's harder for me to share my artwork. So it's not getting out there as much because I was just like digital this, digital that, but where are my roots? So I'm trying to actually do the more traditional route right now. So I'm going through that. So that's a good question. I would think that the fundamentals are what I'm trying to learn. So
I had a friend, I have some amazing artist friends, and I was at a party listening to a few of them talk, and one of the guys, I mean, absolutely phenomenal artist, and they were talking about the particular schools they were going to, and he's like, how did you get so good so fast? And when the guy asked him, well, how many sketches do you do a week? And I think he said, well, we do like 10 or 15 sketches a week. He goes, try doing that number a day. Draw. And any classes that you can take that will expand your knowledge of anatomy. Anything, I would take some drama classes, because let's face it, we're all drama whores in here if we're artists. And we have to convey personality and intent and emotion so much. I would take dance classes or animation classes. Anything that will teach you movement and form.
gesture drawings.
If you are fortunate enough to go to a school with a film class, a really good one, get into the lighting department. Learn about lighting. Learn everything there is to know about lighting. How it bounces, how it reflects off of different materials, so forth and so on. And these are the kinds of things that I would explore when you go to school. Did you? By the way, this is, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Emma Lissick. I'm the illustrator and graphic artist, laser engraver extraordinaire for EM2 Studios.
Ask your production questions of her because she was late.
I'm a production artist, and I specifically work with like packaging and stuff like that, and the regulations around those. Would you be surprised how many there actually are?
Well, since you're late to the show, I will give you a chance to do this real quick. What advice would you give this crowd of people who are more than 10? What would you offer them as advice
For
in
what?
production?
Oh, for production?
Mm-hmm.
Don't cut corners. Look up minimum type sizes, look up your die lines, look up what the print DPI is. Every printer wants something different in their files. Go to the printer, get their die lines, their templates, their setups before you start working on the art.
See, I'm not crazy. Yes, sir. Yes.
How do you guys deal with burnout?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
You may not have heard it. How do you deal with burnout?
Oh, Lord.
If you haven't experienced it, you will. It's just a factor. I'm going to go down to the end of the table and let you cover that one.
So, I guess, ending last year, for 3 years I went gallivanting across North America to do Comic-Cons because that was my burnout from packaging for 5 years. You never quite really get away from it, especially if it's something that you like doing. But taking the break to find your soul, to find new creative inspiration will definitely help. And taking your time. Set good hours. Don't work until 5 o'clock this morning and then wake up at 8. Don't do that. Things that are important to your physical body also helps your creative process. So take care of your food, take care of your sleep, take care of your water intake, but also take those mental days. I mean, how many hours do we work? A lot.
Yeah. Between 10 and 16 sometimes.
A
If we're
day.
really in the middle of a production, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I've gone, oh my God. So there was a period of time where I worked 3 full-time jobs. Let me tell you how that worked. I worked 8 hours at one job. Then I took a 30-minute nap. Then I worked 8 hours at another job. Slept just under 8 hours, rinse, repeat, Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I would work 40 hours straight, then crash for 8 hours. I don't remember much of what happened during that time, but I definitely suffered from burnout after that.
A lot of chai was involved.
A lot of chai.
So what you need to do is you do have to take those breaks. You know, in the offices, they say, stand up, walk around for 10 minutes. Well, you need to do that too. Because what are you doing as an artist?
Yep.
You're bent over, you are completely bent over your desk, or you're in front of your computer doing this and hunching down. You need to get up, stand up, walk around. Now, in terms of, I can't do this anymore kind of burnout. I do not want to pick up a pencil. I do not want to draw. And it will happen. It's going to happen. Even producers and designers are like, I can't do this. Take a break. Take a break. For me, I research. I like finding something interesting about whatever the subject matter is that I'm working on. Research and just get that fire back in your belly. I have a story where I worked at 3DO. 3DO is a great little company. I worked at 3DO Austin. And they have this game that was fairly popular called Army Men. And a lot of people played Army Men. It was a very good game for them, and it was great. And we had just finished work on one of the Might and Magic games, and we were waiting for them to give us our next assignment. And we were all pretty burned because we had really burned the midnight hours on this project because it was a really running behind project. And the marketing director showed up. This is not a good thing. Never let the marketing director decide your next project. Ever. He goes, Army Men is so popular. You know what I could sell? Navy Men. Who here has ever bought a bag of Navy Men? Okay.
When he first brought that up, that's what I said.
Did you?
What?
That I didn't know they existed.
No, they don't. That's my point. So my team, I was a senior lead at the time, just completely burned out, disheartened, destroyed, completely destroyed. So what I ended up doing is I started researching. We decided, hey, let's do something different. Let's set it in the late 30s. And we kind of started finding reasons to get excited about it. And then I started researching just, little things here, little things there, and finding interesting things about the subject matter that we had chosen since we decided to go in a late 30s idea. To get us fired up about it. And it was through me getting fired up that I could get up the rest of the team fired up. So sometimes you just got to take a break, go do something else. Mm-hmm. Go play a game, go for a walk. There is a world out there, I've heard.
It's pretty.
Is it?
I kind of want to add on that. For the computers, there are programs out there that will you can set in break times, and they'll ping, and you can get up, and it'll say like, hey, look around for 30 seconds, micro breaks. It's kind of silly to do that because you're just like, what was I saying before about time? Is you just think that, this last 10 minutes I've been working. That's where burnout comes in because you just keep on forcing yourself to that next point, and then that next point is like, okay, well, I've made it this far. Next point. So I recommend these programs, if you're using the computer a lot too, for just anything. Just take those breaks. They're like 10 minutes. Do something, come back. You'll come back stronger. Let your brain rest a little bit. Your brain is, it only has so much energy throughout the day. You have to do things that can reinvigorate that, just to get your energy levels back up. 10 minutes is 10 minutes, and that 10 minutes, a 10-minute nap, a 20-minute nap. Never underestimate those power naps because your brain needs to just rest a little bit. It'll come back stronger. So I hope that you're taking those breaks and everything. You're not overstraining, because if you are overstraining your eyes and you're an artist, that's going to be the worst things that you're going to have to deal with later on.
I use a blink reminder. It pops up and blinks.
I actually use a.
Did not know about that one.
Oh yeah, I'll send you the link to it later.
Thank you.
I actually, on that note, the last thing with the programs, there are programs to help against glare on your computer, and there's one that I recommend called Flux. And these go way into the night. Like, it'll change your brightness to help your eyesight, to adapt later in the night. The only thing is, and the funniest thing with that program is, be sure to turn it off if you're doing color-sensitive work, because I've drawn a whole piece and turned off Flux. It makes it like an iridescent color, like an orange. And I turned it off, and I'm like, what the heck did I just draw? So to get around that, I ended up taking like a screenshot of the actual piece, and then picking using the color picker to get the actual colors, because it'll change. But what I'm telling you is, you have to take care of yourself and your eyesight and your hands, everything. You guys are all doing this stuff. You have to take care of that, and that's a priority for me. Mm-hmm. Because I want to be able to see all those lines. What's up?
All the way in the back, in the cheap seats.
Working with a new gaming company,
Oh, that's a great question. So the question is how is it working with a new gaming company?
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's really fun. I mean, I got to work, close handed with the designers. So
I have worked with a lot of different companies over the years, and I like startup companies as a personal passion of mine. Now, I'm not trying to toot your horn or anything, but Tiffany has been one of the best clients I've ever had. Her and I have been on the same page on a lot of things, and she's had to make some changes and some tweaks. Don't get married to your art. Like I said, someone else is going to come in and make suggestions about it. What you think is the most amazing, wonderful Renaissance piece on the planet, she's going to think is maybe a stick figure and want you to change it. And you have to be open to those. I have had some amazing experiences working with this particular game company. It's a startup company, but it has a lot of products, a lot of strong vision. And that's what you want to look for, is you want to look for companies and producers and designers who have strong visions, who have a passion about what it is.
And who know what they want.
And know what they want, but are willing to listen and take advice, which is something that I have found with this company has been a major asset and a wonderful pleasure to work with. So if you're going to be looking for people to pitch to, research them. If you were going to go for a job interview, would you not want to know for whom you were going to interview with, or what they did, or what they made, or their reputation? This is the same in this industry. We cannot be so desperate to break in that we're willing to be abused. Okay? You need to come first and foremost. So when you're negotiating and talking, which we're not going to talk about contracts or anything like that, but artists, expectations must be clear. Designers, expectations must be clear. That's one of the advantages I've had on this project, is expectations were very clear. And I couldn't have had a better time because of it. You had a question?
I did. Say you painted a landscape, right? Is it harder to digitize that into a computer and work from that versus drawing a character with, a pen or pencil?
So the question is if you're working in landscapes and you're drawing or painting landscapes, is it harder to get those scanned into the computer versus working with a character and scanning those in?
It depends on your machine.
That's about it.
So things that I always suggest looking at is your DPI, dot per inch. If I scan in a 8.5 by 11 at 72 DPI, it's only going to come out like a 4 by 6. If I scan it as a 600 DPI, I'm only going to be able to get up to 11 by 17, maybe. So if you have a good scanner that can scan like 1200 DPI, so when you're going to scan in, know where it's going to go. That's always my first advice. Know what it's going to go on, what you're going to use it for, because you don't want to waste the gigabyte space on your hard drive. But also, how are you going to use it? Can your program handle it? Can your computer handle it? I always go bigger because I know eventually I'm going to put it on a banner. Yeah. So I've got some giant pieces that are 800 DPI.
Remember that story about the 6,000 DPI?
I didn't mean to do that.
Go as big as your computer will handle it, and the absolute minimums, if you're going for print, is 300 DPI.
Unless you're going to see it on a billboard, and then I would say the minimum is 150.
Yeah.
But you have to be at a billboard and see it from across the room.
Yeah, I agree. I saw a gentleman all the way in the back corner who had his hand patiently up this whole time. Oh. No, okay, I couldn't tell who it was. I just saw this person back there.
Lady.
You do?
They're very nice.
I couldn't see, I'm sorry. You're in the dark.
Get better glasses.
I was just wondering, you probably already touched on this, but how to break in, I want to go for Blizzard or Bethesda or Bungie, ZeniMax, those game companies, and I'm finding it harder to get into that. You said do local games. Where are local games?
The focus of this particular panel is dealing with tabletop games. However, to answer your question is portfolio.
And
Put yourself out there.
submit it. everywhere.
Everywhere.
Behance, DeviantArt, like use all the big names, but also have your own site. Be easily found.
Right. When you're trying to get into these big game companies, and she's talking about Bethesda, which is ZeniMax now, and
Nope, they're still separate.
Are they still separate entities?
Mm-hmm.
I still want them anyway. Long personal history. Blizzard and so forth. How do you get into these groups? And a lot of it is networking. It's going to be networking with people, talking with people. The others, just be freaking amazing at what you do. You're talking Blizzard. If you want to get into Blizzard, you need to be godlike, just honestly. But you don't have to be godlike at first. You can get into other companies. You can get into Bethesda's. You can get into id. You can get into Gearbox. You can get into these other companies. But you're going to have to find out what you want to do, because it is very compartmentalized. Are you going to be a texture artist? Are you going to environmental artist? Then model the crap out of stuff and put them in an engine like Unreal 4, and then show it off and send it to them. It's all going to be about your portfolio and the strength of your portfolio. It's also going to be a little bit about who you know there. It's also going to be about what they need. You need to research them, find out the jobs that they're offering, find out what those jobs do, and make your portfolio customized for that single interview.
And don't just submit once.
No.
Like, if you keep watching their website and you submit once, they're going to get like 150,000 at once. It's going to take them a while to go through that. They might hire someone, and then they might have another project open up. So they'll have another listing come up. So keep on it. Just keep watching the sites, or if there's like, I don't know if they list them on LinkedIn or any of those kind of sites, but like,
Gama
if
Sutra.
you're interested, just keep checking it over and over and over. Submit it once a month, once a week, whatever positions are open, so that you get yourself in front of who's looking.
Hit them over the head, basically.
And it's the same with ISO and Wizards of the Coast, right?
It's going to be the same with any game company, be it a tabletop company or be it a video game company. You need to put yourself out there, and you need to go, hey, I'm still alive, because companies like Blizzard, for example, are going to get thousands from all over the globe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how are you going to stand out? You're going to have to stand out. And if it's not quite the role that they were trying to fill, and they're not going, oh, we'll hang on to this person because they might be able to do this. No, they're going to forget about you. They're going to empty their tray and then start over fresh. So the next job that comes along that you want, you need to submit again and again and again. So that
And
would be my
sometimes they're
best.
different departments and different games, and
Yeah.
they only look at their game.
Yeah, research. So cool. Yes, sir.
So my question is, I didn't have this advice when I went to school. Home taught or self-taught and YouTube or school?
I did both.
Yes.
Because I went to a fairly bad school.
That's
What, do you have recommendations, especially for people here who are from Phoenix or from Tempe or whatever, where to go to, where to avoid, what are good channels to follow, stuff like that?
So I started in graphic design right out of high school. I had someone willing to give me a chance, and that's when I learned laser engraving, vinyl banners, all that production stuff, and being able to make it, manufacture. That was 14 years ago. I'm still doing it today. And the way that I taught myself is I went out and I was like, well, okay, here's the programs I want. I want to use Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, whatnot. I used my own webcomic that I ran for 12 years as my sandbox, basically, my testing and proving grounds. So I had a goal and a project, but I also had all of these learning tools because I looked at Photoshop World, which has a whole set of Photoshop users like Scott Kelby, Terry White, Dan Crow, etc., who are gurus at these programs that blog and go to Photoshop Worlds and other conventions and stuff like that, specifically around the programs that I was using. So I learned how to become probably one of the top 90th percentile in the Valley, according to my temp agency, with the proficiency in these programs. And so I could do pretty much anything they needed. but I still wanted to do my own thing. So I just kept practicing, kept using the tools, found new different ways, and I temped a lot because every different company needed a different thing. I learned more at an ad agency than I did at the study abroad company. I learned more about packaging at one label place that I now use for my other label place that's my full-time job. So pick up skills, take risks, go out and see what people need.
Again, it's about putting yourself out there. So this is a great resource right here for that kind of thing as well. So, did you have anything?
Going with that, I would say you were talking about being self-taught. Yeah, I definitely go on YouTube. I actually started with Newgrounds a long time ago. I'm sure everyone remembers Newgrounds. I picked out some animation artists, or some animators. Sorry. Some animators that I liked, Dan Paladin, he's the one who did like the Alien Hominoid and Castle Crashers, and I started looking at their line work. I was talking about this before, and I found the program they used a long time ago. I think I started off with Flash 8 or Flash. What was the newest one? Macromedia.
Flash. Owned by Macromedia.
Yeah, so I found the program I liked, and then I found that I liked vector art. So I can always transfer. You had something to say about Illustrator too.
Yeah.
But vector art was my, that was the program I liked. I had tried Photoshop. I've taken tutorial, like you were saying online. It's just how much you put into it too. Yeah, there's some really great tutorials online, but do you really you can find the program that you like. I mean, I just read an article recently where this guy honed his craft. I think he made his whole comic in Microsoft Paint just recently.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that?
Frank, one of my webcomic guys.
It's amazing, whatever it is. Though.
It's really good, but just like the classic,
Yeah.
I'd say you get something that you like, and you definitely take it to its limit. You find the program you like, and like I said, I found vector art. So there's a lot of different programs for vector art. Try them out, and you can always switch them out, and they're interchangeable. But like I said, I prefer vector art because it's like my own little sandbox. You can pull things around. I took elements that that applied to me, and I said I just want to learn everything about this program. So that's when you can look at the tutorials for that one specifically. If you're really good at that one program, and if you can use all the shortcuts, if you can pump out some really nice art, then people will notice that. What did you use to make this? That's the common question, and then that will inspire them. They'll pick up that same program because they saw what you can do with it. If you hone your craft, if you just keep at it, that's what I would suggest. And I started a long time ago with that. The newest cartoons like Samurai Jack, the newest ones, Powerpuff Girls. I just looked at their line work. I'm going to keep on saying that to me. I was just getting happy with my lines and going back to traditional art, which I was telling you guys. I was just trying to be happy with making a line. I think a lot of you can, have friends. They're just like, I can't even draw a stick figure. I can't even draw a straight line. Well, why can't you? Because you just need to put in a little bit of practice. And if you can be happy with just making the lines can create anything. And that's what I'm telling you guys is, just to start with the basics. That's where I'm at.
We've got time for one more question, and then we're going to kind of wrap up. Sir, you were quick.
For somebody just got out of high school, where would I want to start if I went into texture or animation?
Texture and animation. I'm going to tout on the Guildhall at SMU. But that's a bias of mine because I was a professor there for 5 years. I taught a master's degree in level design. But that is a master's degree program, so you need to just get a degree. Get something, anything, it really doesn't matter, underwater basket weaving. Preferably something a little more in line with what you want to do. But look at other texture artists out there. There's a CG Society, CG Talk. It's an amazing resource for all the professionals, and we're talking like movie professionals, as well as video game professionals. And so that's a great resource that I would suggest. Get in a program, start drawing, tear apart, because you can mod most games these days. Look at their textures, tear them apart, redo them. I could give you tons of advice, but you have to just basically just tear it apart and look at it for yourself. and then get involved, which has been the overall theme here, is get involved. Put yourself out there. Reach out to the different forums that are out there and be vulnerable. So with that, we've been given the 5-minute high five. Is there any advice that you would give? Well, no, better yet, what has been the most rewarding thing for you in being a game artist?
Oh, goodness. So I love puzzles. So I love being able to figure out the problems, make them work, and then making a physical object that I can put in front of people and to make them smile. Like, that's my ultimate goal in life, is put stuff in front of them and give someone a smile.
What about you?
Me, I was telling you guys about this before. I like to become that factory. I like to be able to spit out these ideas and have different variations. You know, I like to be able to just, if they want this one thing, just to over-exaggerate it, create a bunch of different pieces. I like that. I like to be able to troubleshoot and try to find where they want to go with this art. Just anybody, you know. So it was always fun to be that person. Hey, why don't we, you know, have a koi fish and a stapler? I asked my friends, and then I just combine them. You know, any objects. I'm just like, how can we combine these two images? So just to become a factory of creativity was my favorite thing. And with the cards, watching people play with the things that I've designed is great.
Right. And I have to reflect Emma in that I love it when someone interacts with my art. But I think the best moment, and I'm going to wrap up with this, for me as an artist, is I'm going to tell a story on you, Emma. I'm the reason she's married.
I have an engagement painting.
She does. I did a piece called Dragon Blowing Bubbles, and her fiance, well, actually was a boyfriend at the time, saw it, and he wanted to get it for her because he knew that she liked it. And so I sold it to him, and he took it, and this started a conversation which by at the end of the night had them engaged. So that is the most satisfying moment for me personally. Thank you very, very much for
Thank
coming.
you.
We will have another panel in this room at 1:30, and that panel's focus will be careers in gaming. Now, again, it will be focused on tabletop gaming. But come back at 1:30 for that panel, and in the meantime, go over to the Hyatt to the second floor, buy the escalators, not the elevators, and try Bronham Games.